when Emily's new boyfriend travels for a work contract. She soon joins him in sunny New Mexico for a mini vacation weekend. And after a day of sightseeing in the heat and cooling drinks, they hit the hotel bar to really start the party. Beautiful Emily is being noticed, and now the sun's gone down. The devils come out to play.
When your partner goes missing, you can expect that you're going to be a suspect.
In the light of the next day, there'll be hell to pay. New Mexico, the land of enchantment, is the 5th largest state in the USA and beckons tourists with boundless natural beauty from valleys, mountain peaks, to one of the most biologically rich deserts in the world. One of the top 10 sunniest states, these lands north of the Rio Grande are unmatched for outdoor recreation. Carlsbad offers backcountry wilderness trails, rafting, fishing, and a deep descent into the earth to marvel at limestone cave formations. Distractingly picturesque golf links, exceptional shopping and dining round out Carlsbad. With its clear, hot, and rainless summer days, it's the ideal place to unwind in the sun. Only about 8 hours away from Carlsbad, Emily Koning is born on November 26, 1983, in the lively and bustling Texas town of Garland.
Well, Emily's a very active, young, vibrant woman. She's really into sports. She loves softball. She's a little bit superstitious too. She really believes in symbolism. Her favorite color is green. Her nickname is Lucky, and everyone knows her favorite number is 23.
Together with her mother, father, and her brother Daniel, her family life is rich with love and communication.
Emily is a bright young woman from Texas. She's compassionate, she's caring, her friends loved her, she loves helping people. That's the kind of person Emily was.
Loved ones are happy for Emily when she falls in love with a man named Donovan. They seem really well suited. Emily and him get married and start a very happy family of their own. But tragedy strikes.
Emily's brother Daniel died in a car crash. And really, the entire family is overcome by grief. Emily is particularly hit hard by this event.
And then the unthinkable happens. Emily and Donovan divorce in September 2013.
Emily's the type of person that bounces back from challenges that would devastate the rest of us. Her brother unfortunately passed away in 2013 in a devastating car accident, but she manages, even through that and her divorce, she manages to stay friends with her ex-husband and still be a positive person in everyone's lives. They even decide to move across the street from each other. They keep in regular contact and are still very close friends.
Emily gets her education degree and becomes a school teacher.
In September of 2013, Emily takes a job teaching 3rd grade in a small community just outside of Dallas called Plano.
In November 2013, a clip of her ex-partner spreads over social media. He's caught on a hidden camera in an incident where he's defending a couple.
Emily shares the link on social media, and she comments that she's thankful her ex-husband is a person who her children will grow up to be proud of. It's apparent their divorce is amicable at this time.
Thankfully, Emily really does seem to be lucky. She's living up to that nickname. Soon after her divorce, she starts a new job as a teacher that she's really excited about, and she meets someone new.
Very shortly after the divorce, Emily starts dating again. He's a 33-year-old man from Euless, Texas, named Robert Early. Robert is also divorced and the father of a young girl. Emily and Robert go to the same high school, but never met there.
They're at school together, but he's older, so they don't really know each other there. They do, however, meet on social media almost by mistake later on. Emily actually thinks he's somebody else.
Emily and Robert finally meet face-to-face at a bonfire party in November, and Emily realizes who Robert really is. And their attraction is instant. The couple become quickly inseparable. Emily's parents hosted dinner to get to know their daughter's new boyfriend, and they all get along well.
There are a lot of changes going on in Emily's life right now, but like her nickname would suggest, she's lucky they're all turning out for the best.
Most of the time, we keep our relationship separate. When we move on, we don't necessarily introduce our ex to our new partner. But for Emily, it was a bit different because she was still so close to her ex-husband. So she ends up thinking it's natural to introduce her new love, Robert, to her ex, Donovan.
Robert Early works as a driller at an oil rig site in Carlsbad, New Mexico, and he's sent away on a work assignment.
While Robert is working as an oil driller in Carlsbad, New Mexico, Emily figures it would be a great opportunity to go on a bit of a vacation. She can get to see him, but also get to enjoy everything the area has to offer.
After school lets out on Friday, February 28, 2014. With her children safe and secure at her parents' for the weekend, Emily jumps in her car and makes the 8-hour drive to Carlsbad to be with Robert. Carlsbad is in the southwestern part of New Mexico. On one side is the Pecos River, and the other, the Guadalupe Mountains.
It's so sunny and beautiful that people travel there and they find all kinds of activities to do, like hiking and fishing and sightseeing in general. Just outdoor life is wonderful there.
Thousands of tourists flock to Carlsbad Caverns, famous limestone caves. Beautiful scenery, lots of desert scapes. It doesn't rain, so it's a nice hot spot for people to go for a nice vacation. There's mining and oil business in the region as well.
On Saturday, March 1st, the couple head out to cram in as much sun and sightseeing as they can before Emily has to head back the next day.
After doing some clothes shopping, the couple hits the famous tourist attraction, the Carlsbad Caverns National Park.
It's an amazing descent, going 750 feet underground, truly a geological wonder. It's unbelievable, something that has to be seen.
They're having a great time shopping and sightseeing, and they even ended up in Roswell, New Mexico to check out the UFO stuff.
Since they're only an hour away from Roswell, which is the site of the famous Area 51 encounter and synonymous with UFOs, they have to go there.
Roswell is located in both the high plains and the Chihuahuan Desert, a place sunny even in the winter months and scorching in the heat of summer.
Emily checks in with her mother just to let her know how much fun they're having sightseeing and traveling.
Once the desert heat is getting to them, they decide to stop for fajitas and margaritas, as one does in that area. Great local food. They don't drink very much. Emily only has one drink, while Robert has two.
After a busy Saturday, they return to the Carlsbad hotel where Robert has been living to freshen up and to head to the hotel bar, the Blue Cactus Lounge.
Once they get back to Carlsbad, they don't have to drive any longer, so they decide to make a night of it, go out on the town, have a few drinks.
The bar is a popular destination in Carlsbad.
Robert and Emily have been drinking liberally. They've been dancing and having a great time, playing pool. A couple of times throughout the night, Emily leaves to go to the washroom, but Robert's troubled by the fact that Emily seems to be drawing some attention due to the fact that she's got a short skirt on.
She comes back and tells Robert that a man had actually approached her and told her that if Robert wasn't able to take care of her, he would take care of her.
Tensions started to simmer, and before they knew it, they were in a heated argument. Emily's a very positive person. She doesn't like conflict or to fight, so she decides to go outside the bar, have a cigarette, calm down, and hopefully everything is back to normal when she returns.
Consumption of alcohol typically reduces your inhibition. And in this case, Emily's had eyes on her all night. And when she steps outside the bar, you just don't know who's been watching.
This is the last time Emily Lambert is seen alive. After school lets out on Friday, February 28, 2014, school teacher Emily Lambert drives from her Texas home to Carlsbad, New Mexico, to meet her boyfriend who is stationed there for work. On Saturday, they go sightseeing, and after a day in the heat, end up at the hotel bar to unwind. But when Emily attracts some unwanted attention at the bar, she and Robert argue, and Emily storms out of the bar alone.
Well, back in Garland, Texas, Emily's parents are leaving church after being at morning service, and they see that there's an urgent message from Robert.
To the Koenig's distress, Robert reports that Emily is missing and wants to know if she's called them.
Robert tells Emily's parents they had had an argument earlier, and that Emily had stormed out of the bar, and that she had had too much to drink. Robert's been up pacing the floor since 5 o'clock in the morning, and Emily has not returned.
Emily's parents instantly decide to make the 8-hour drive to help find their daughter.
Once they hear that she's missing, they decide immediately to make the 8-hour drive to Carlsbad. Since they're near the border of Mexico, the parents are afraid that she might have been kidnapped by a drug cartel, or that somehow their daughter might have gotten mixed up in that inadvertently.
Robert is one of approximately 40,000 laborers, over and above the population, who have moved onto the scene, taking advantage of work and good wages from the oil boom.
There is a phenomena that takes place when large numbers of highly paid young people come to an area that they really have no stake in. And what this results in is often higher crime rates. Authorities have noticed an increase in property crimes, they've noticed an increase in sexual assaults, and they've even noticed an increase in homicides.
Robert calls Emily's ex-husband to see if he's heard from her. When he learns he has also heard nothing from Emily, Robert knows he needs the help of the authorities.
Quite often, someone's partner has intimate knowledge of where and when that person was last seen. So you are going to be of interest to the police, either as a witness or as a suspect.
Robert calls 911 at 12:10 p.m. on Sunday, March 2nd. Police are immediately dispatched to his hotel.
Police speak to a concerned Robert. He is cooperative and anxious about Emily's well-being.
Because Emily's missing, it seems likely that she's met someone. So the first thing officers do is they pull the surveillance video.
Police discover that Emily's clothes, her purse, her car keys, her belongings, for that matter, are all still in the room. Her vehicle is still in the parking lot. They know that time is of the essence here, and Emily has to be found.
In a missing persons case, time is always of the essence, and the pressure's on for the police to get some leads in this case.
Robert really needs to be pushed by the investigators here to think long and hard about any small detail, because anything that he could remember could potentially lead to finding Emily.
Police assure Robert that this is a non-custodial interview. He is free to leave at any time. They ask him again to describe exactly what he observes when Emily goes missing, down to the last detail. Robert uses his cell phone photos of their sightseeing day as a visible aid.
One of the things Robert is able to provide for them is their food and drink receipts from the night before.
Police will use these receipts to corroborate Robert's story and begin to develop a timeline right down to the minute.
Robert remembers them meeting up with his boss at the lounge, and that's when they really started to drink in honor of Emily's last night in town. The word Robert used to describe them at that point is obliterated.
Robert emphasizes how Emily attracts unwanted attention by the shortness of her skirt and how he becomes increasingly nervous about this. And then, when she goes to the washroom, she tells him a man came onto her. Robert thinks that Emily is flirting with him. CCTV footage from the hotel confirms that the couple leaves the lounge separately, Emily before Robert.
They'd been at the bar for some time together, drinking. He tells the parents that there had been a terrible argument the night before and that Emily had in fact stormed out of the bar intoxicated.
Robert tells the police that sometime between 11:40 and 12:20 that night, he left the bar to look for Emily.
Basically, he's been up since 5 in the morning, pacing, wondering where she was because she never returned to the room. Now, when people get together and drink and things happen in that environment, emotions become heightened and arguments can easily take place.
No one saw Emily leaving the lounge, but Robert has a suspicion that maybe the man that hit on her earlier that night had propositioned her, and Emily, being so friendly and open and in her inebriated state, could have left with him. And he knows that if she's not back by now, something bad must have happened to her.
Emily's family arrives and talk to police.
Emily's parents tell the police something terrifying. Not only has Emily never been out of contact with them for this long before, she also never leaves her phone. She would have her phone with her at all times.
The first 24 to 48 hours are incredibly important in a missing persons case. You need to really hit the street, and you need to do it quickly.
Pulling surveillance video and canvassing the area to look for potential witnesses is a key priority in establishing information that may lead to Emily's whereabouts.
Back in Garland, friends make a page for the missing Emily and get her picture out circulating on social media.
Her friends have a theory that maybe she hit her head and has amnesia, and now she's wandering around Carlsbad with no idea who she is.
But police haven't finished talking to Robert. There are parts of his story that don't really add up.
Police are known for having a really good instinct when it comes to talking to people and being able to figure out if they're telling the truth or not. And there's something about Robert's story that just isn't adding up. They don't see him as the type of guy that would let Emily leave the bar by herself, inebriated and angry.
And police can't find witnesses that connect Emily to anyone else in the bar. Officers try to change in their interrogation technique.
There are a number of techniques that investigators will use to elicit a confession, potentially from a suspect, or just get more details from a person that they may be interrogating. In this particular case, one officer leaves the room while another stays because that change in dynamic may cause the person to speak differently about the event.
Officers once again ask Robert what he thinks has happened to Emily, and he has a gut feeling that something bad has happened. And he even makes the statement that he hopes that she's not dead.
The remaining officer asks Robert if the argument he had in the bar with Emily is discreet.
Robert tells police he's convinced that the matter was discreet, that the argument likely flew under the radar. The officer point blank asks Robert if he has a temper, and Robert denies it.
But the officer reveals that police have contacted his ex-wife and ex-girlfriend, who both claim Robert has a violent nature. Robert agrees to take a polygraph test. While not admissible as evidence in court, a polygraph can draw out information.
People naturally think that if they're innocent and they take a polygraph test and pass, this is automatically going to take them off the police radar.
Officers ask Robert repeatedly where Emily is. Although he claims not to know her whereabouts, he fails the polygraph test.
An innocent person could fail a test, even though they had nothing to do with the event that's being presented to them. A nervous person will show up on a polygraph test, and it gives investigators an avenue for continued interrogation.
Once Robert gets the results of the polygraph test, police notice that he's curling in on himself as if the weight of the guilt is just too much. The cops know what this means, and they ask him if there's anything more he wants to say.
And this time, he does.
At this time, it's pretty clear to the investigators that Robert is now the prime suspect, and they're very eager to hear what he has to say about what happened that night.
After a sunshine-filled mini vacation in Carlsbad, New Mexico, Emily Lambert is reported missing by her boyfriend of a few months, who says a mystery man makes advances to her in the bar. Friends and family do all they can to help find Emily, while a police interview with Emily's boyfriend Robert begins to look a lot more like an interrogation.
Police tell Robert that by holding back, he has put Emily's life at risk.
When Robert fails a polygraph test, his story starts to change.
Robert's been telling the police the same story for over 2 days, but now he wants to add something new. Now Robert reports that when he was looking out the window of his hotel room, he saw Emily in the parking lot. Emily was getting into the truck with a large man wearing a pale-colored cowboy hat. Even more terrifying, Robert said, she was wearing almost no clothes.
Robert says he scrambles into his vehicle and pursues the truck.
The cowboy drives south, and Robert follows.
After a while, the truck with Emily pulls up to a house.
Robert claims that he followed the truck, and once they pulled up to a house, when Robert got out of his car, the cowboy charged him with a piece of metal pipe. Emily jumped in between them and unfortunately got hit instead.
Well, Robert is fearful now that perhaps he's the one responsible for putting Emily in this position where she was hurt, and now he's inadvertently going to be accused of causing her injuries.
Police ask Robert Early to lead them immediately to Emily. The men hurry to a police vehicle. There may still be time to save Emily Lambert's life. Officers drive Early south.
As they drive, the police actually have to prod Robert for details about where they were because the man himself has gone strangely quiet.
Robert directs police 3 miles off of the Loving Highway and points out a very old residence up on a hill, flanked by 2 pilasters. Police begin to inspect the area. Robert attempts to accompany them, but they send him back to wait at the vehicle.
Police notice 2 drag marks on the ground. They follow those marks around to the back of an old tin shed.
They follow the drag marks around the corner, and a little ways in the distance they see a strange shape on the ground.
It's 4:30 in the afternoon of Tuesday, March 4th, 2014, when police see a body with copious amounts of blood around the head area. The body has a match for Emily's owl tattoo. They're sure they found Emily Lambert's lifeless body clad only in her bra.
When the police go out to tell Robert that they found Emily's body, he's leaning against the police car smoking a cigarette very nonchalantly. They give him the news, and his reaction isn't quite what they expected. Ordinarily, if you tell someone that their loved one has died, there's a lot of emotion or maybe shock. They don't see that from Robert. So now they have a body and a prime suspect.
Now they need a confession. The effects of a case like this on the investigating officers make it difficult for them, in some cases, to distance themselves and conduct an investigation that results in a confession.
An investigative technique that might be employed is to bring in another person to actually conduct the interrogation. Somebody who may look at the occurrence with fresh eyes and not be tainted by the emotion of having found such a horrific sight. Well, a new investigator or interrogator in the room with Robert gives police a chance to establish a new connection with the suspect. The whole point of this new interrogator being in the room and the way he is speaking with Robert is to try to establish a bond with Robert over something they may have in common that may well be their taste in bars, or the fact that they enjoy going out for drinks. The lifestyle commonality is frequently a way an investigator may establish a connection with a suspect.
And I think they're hoping for a confession.
A rapport that they hope will elicit the confession they need from Robert Early. This next officer works the interrogation in yet another way. He says he's not there to cut deals, but to give Robert an opportunity to talk.
One of the tricks police officers use to get confessions is they build empathy with the suspect, and that's exactly what this officer does. He tells Robert he himself could never get married because that would cut down on his freedom. He likes to go out and drink and to party in the hopes that Robert will also reveal what his motivations were that night.
His aim is to make Robert feel as comfortable as possible, hoping that Robert's going to talk.
The ploy seems to work. Early tells the officer that Emily is headstrong and physically stronger than any woman he's ever dated.
Just when Robert is on the brink of a confession, he suddenly asks if there's a chance he won't see his child again.
Then, apparently resigned to telling the whole truth, he requests the opportunity to smoke a cigarette outside, and afterwards, he'll tell the officer everything he knows. And the officer must now think fast and make a move that's on the sly.
Well, there's a reason investigators, in today's day and age, conduct these interrogations for the most part using video recording and audio recording so that anybody seeing it or witnessing, perhaps in a courtroom, would see the entire interrogation. So moving the interrogation outside potentially to allow Robert to have a cigarette could be problematic. If the recording was to not continue, for example, there's a chance that portion of the interrogation or anything that Robert says, it either could not be admitted in court or the judge may not give it the same weight if the officer was to just testify about something that Robert said.
The officer has a small recorder in his jacket pocket, but he can't be spotted turning it on by Early and risk inhibiting him.
The officer fumbles with his jacket and manages to hit a button on the recorder, but he's worried he doesn't know if it's actually the record button or not.
Robert Early begins to open up.
Is the tape recorder working? Is it going to get Robert's confession?
This confession could be the last piece of the puzzle in solving the murder of Emily Lambert.
A weekender in sun-soaked Carlsbad, New Mexico, turns into a panic search for a young schoolteacher when her boyfriend, Robert Early, reports her missing. But after 2 days of grilling by detectives, Early's story crumbles and he tells police he sees Emily get battered by a mystery man wielding a piece of pipe. Detectives tighten the screws and Early offers yet a third story. But is the confession caught on tape?
He does manage to switch on the recorder and captures, in fact, Robert's third version of what happened that night.
In this relationship of only a few months, a perfect storm occurs in a bar on a hot Saturday night.
After having quite a few drinks, Emily starts to get favorable attention from other men in the bar. Robert just can't handle this. His masculinity is so threatened, he flies into a rage, not even caring that other people are watching.
Robert admits to the officer that Emily does return to his hotel room when she leaves the bar after all.
Robert's story has changed multiple times, and one thing cops know for certain, the truth never changes. This time, Robert claims that Emily did go back to the hotel room with him, and he finally reveals what he's capable of when rage and alcohol mix.
Emily's very angry with Robert over what happened in the bar. So angry, in fact, she ends the relationship, begins to pack her things, and she's going to head back to Texas.
Early claims that he doesn't want Emily to drive while intoxicated, and when he tries to stop her from leaving, it initiates a struggle.
Well, when somebody's struggling against someone who can overpower them or who's bigger than them, biting them might be the only way they can inflict enough pain on that person to get themselves free. Often bite marks just leave a bruise and an outline of where the teeth were, but to break the skin, that takes an extra amount of pressure. This probably surprised him and he flew backwards and hit the wall, causing a dent in the wall, which was noticeable later.
In his version of events, Robert Early retaliates and pushes her. Emily falls down.
Robert shows very little remorse when he recounts the attack to the police.
The fight escalates. What was previously just meant to restrain his girlfriend now turns into an angry assault, and he starts kicking her in the face.
At this point, Emily is unconscious and Robert notices that she's breathing strangely.
All the injuries to her face from his steel-toed boots, combined with the fact that she'd been drinking, can really cause a person to have difficulty breathing.
Well, it seems to him at this point that, it's gone so far that he really can't go back. So it just gets worse from there.
He drags her unconscious body to the car.
He goes to his vehicle and finds a length of rope, wraps it around her neck, and jams the rest of it inside the car door in order to drag her to where he plans on dropping her.
Robert's now looking for a secluded place, where he can finish his work.
Early ends up taking her to a remote house off the Loving Road.
He realizes she's regained consciousness.
The officer asks how Robert drags Emily to the place her body is found, and Early explains. The drag marks indicate that Robert Early drags Emily Lambert 510 feet, longer than a football field.
Emily's dragged 500 feet along the trail and sustains all kinds of injuries to her torso, arms, legs, not to mention that her esophagus and trachea would be crushed by the force of the rope around her neck as she's pulled. If Emily was at all conscious when the rope was wrapped around her neck and just unable to fight back, it must have been horrifying to be dragged down the road by the neck, unable to breathe, choking, the pain of being rolled around at a high rate of speed beside a vehicle and just having your flesh torn away and being pummeled by the road as you're dragged along must have been horrific for her.
At 1 a.m. on March 5th, 2014, Carlsbad officers book Robert Early into the Eddy County Detention Center and charge him with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and tampering with evidence. His bail is set at $1 million. The family is notified that Emily's body has been found.
The parents are understandably heartbroken. They lost their son Daniel just a few years before, and now they've lost their daughter too. They have no more children. Her best friend is so devastated at the news that she actually collapses. Meanwhile, the larger community that Emily was a part of is so devastated that they need counseling.
Even though Emily has just begun teaching, she makes a strong impression on co-workers and students.
Children tend to get really attached to their teachers, especially teachers they like, and it was no different for Emily's students. They were so upset that their favorite teacher had died that they actually needed counseling.
The officers in this case have been deeply affected by Emily's death, and the images will stay with them for a long, long time.
They are united with the Lambert family in an ultimate quest for justice. No one helps Emily Lambert when she asks for protection. She's betrayed by the man she trusts when he transforms from a nasty drunk to a vicious killer. Will Emily finally get the justice she deserves in court? In May 2015, Robert Early faces a jury as he stands for trial for the murder of Emily Lambert in Carlsbad, New Mexico.
During the trial, the prosecution presented an accidental recording that Robert's phone did in a pocket dialing incident during the beginning of their altercation. Emily was actually recorded arguing with him just before the assault happened, and the parents were able to hear that during the court process.
Emily's family actually get to hear this recording and hear their daughter's last words, which were, "I hate you. Never, never again get away from me."
That's got to be horrible for the family to hear her last words in this kind of case.
Security personnel who work at the club testify that Emily asked them for help, stating her boyfriend has had too much to drink and is getting angry. Robert Early is also banned from the bar that night.
It's really unfortunate that all the warning signs that were there sort of went unheeded. Emily reached out for help a number of times and it just didn't come for her. And it's devastating for the family to know that she was trying to get help and it just didn't come. Well, the drag marks that were seen by officers at the time, the night that Emily went missing, turned out to be evidence that Robert had dragged her into an area and killed her. The cause of death ultimately was determined to be blunt force trauma.
Employees from a clothing store testify that on the day of her murder, Emily Lambert purchases a dress and Robert Early purchases a shirt. They wear the new items to the bar that night. Early's shirt and Emily's dress are found discarded on a roadside, along with the metal pump that is used to bludgeon Emily Lambert to death.
Robert drags her from the car. And She's still alive, very much alive at that point. And he just beats her to death.
Autopsy revealed that the final cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. After stopping the vehicle that was dragging Emily alongside, Robert didn't want to take any chances that she might still be alive, and he hit her a few more times with the air pump, just to be sure.
The case against Robert Early, with his 3 different versions of events, looks cut and dried.
Well, the defense would argue that Robert's condition that night, because of how intoxicated he was unable to form the intent to actually plan to kill Emily. So they argued that, in fact, the offense should be second-degree murder and not first-degree murder.
A second-degree conviction could shield Robert Early from life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Several witnesses from the bar, including bar staff and security, can testify that Robert's been drinking heavily that night, but only one comes forward to say that Robert actually looked unsteady on his feet.
But after a 3-week trial in the Eddy County Courthouse, a jury of 5 men and 7 women need only a few hours to unanimously declare Robert Early guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping in the death of Emily Lambert. The judge sentences Robert Early to the mandatory sentence of life in prison without parole.
Robert Early's defense team does not plan to appeal the decision.
Robert appears to be emotional as he stands and asks Emily's family to forgive him, even though he acknowledges that they probably can't. Robert tells her family that the guilt and pain he suffered since that night has been a living nightmare, and he'd trade places with Emily if he could.
But Robert Early has sealed his own fate. Prosecution praises the all-around strong investigation and how the officer so adroitly gets Robert Early's confession.
It can be difficult for investigators to let go of these cases. I'm sure they struggled with the details of Emily's homicide. And in an attempt to, stay connected, they reach out to Emily's family. And they just keep in touch with them over the time.
Really comes as no surprise that they kept in touch over time. It really helps both of them cope with what they've had to deal with.
Her family and friends all decide to get Lucky 23 tattoos to remember Emily, just so her memory and positive spirit will always live on.
In May 2016, a mandatory appeal is filed. Robert Early's lawyers argue that the statements he made to the police should not have been allowed into evidence. But the New Mexico Supreme Court disagrees. When Carol Schlloberg's new boyfriend suggests a motorcycle trip to Mexico, it seems like the perfect way to start their new life together. Carol loves the quaint town of Puerto Escondido and never gives a second thought to her safety.
When you're on vacation, you never expect anything bad to happen, especially vacation in an idyllic, beautiful place.
A walk on the beach in the middle of the day with other people around. What could possibly go wrong?
Carol never expects anything bad to happen. It's just another beautiful day in this quaint Mexican village.
She had no inkling that this exciting adventure would end up being her last. Puerto Escondido, a laid-back port town in the Oaxaca state of Mexico, is one of the country's most popular tourist destinations. Zacatela's strong waves make it one of the top 10 surfing destinations in the world. Surfers come from all over the globe to compete in the town's annual Big Wave Surf Contest. Because of its waves and currents, it's not a good swimming beach. But its long stretch of white sand is lined with rustic hotels, bars, and restaurants. You don't have to go far to grab a great meal or a cold drink.
It's 1998 when Carol visits Puerto Escondido, and at this time, it's still considered to be a safe tourist destination. It's very popular with Canadian and American tourists, and the population fluctuates between 20 to 35,000 depending on what season it is. However, tourists don't always see what's going on behind the scenes.
A poorly executed devaluation of the peso has plunged the country into a recession. Millions of people lose their jobs. Both locals and tourists are impacted by the rising crime wave.
It's fairly well understood that a recession in a community can drastically impact crime rates. As the recession deepens and people struggle to feed their families, they reach out for any means they can to put food on the table. Often this would involve theft or other petty crime. As the discrepancy between the wealthy and the poor grows, those wealthy people become more and more targets of that crime.
It's a love of adventure that lures 40-year-old Carol Schlloberg to Puerto Escondido in March. Born and raised in Weston, Massachusetts, Carol leaves home to attend college. She becomes a talented artist, known for large, abstract oil paintings. After receiving her Master's of Fine Arts from Yale University in 1992, she teaches art at Yale's School of Art from 1993 to 95.
Her friends and family describe Carol as gentle, but she also has an adventurous side. She's into vintage motorcycle racing and not just as a spectator. During sidecar motorcycle races, Carol stretches her body parallel to the ground with her face only inches from the asphalt.
It's at one of these races that Carol meets Timothy Courts. They quickly bond over their love of vintage motorcycles. Soon after, Carol and Timothy begin dating. They start planning a trip to Mexico. When their relationship is just a few months old, Carol leaves home in New Haven, Connecticut to start a new life with Timothy. She moves to Vermont to live with him and his 14-year-old son.
It's always a risk to move in with someone, especially when you don't know them that well and the relationship is still quite new. While everything seems great in the honeymoon period, living with someone can quickly become a harsh reality. But in this case, Timothy and Carol have a lot in common. Timothy's teenage son even respects Carol and gets along with her. And Timothy seems to really support what Carol does in her dream of being a full-time artist. He builds a studio for her soon after she moves in.
The 5,000-mile motorcycle trip from Vermont to Puerto Escondido is intended to be a test of their 8-month relationship.
Going on a vacation together can definitely put strain on a relationship, and in this case, they're going on a long road trip to a place where they may not speak the language, which is even more stressful.
Carol and Timothy arrive in Puerto Escondido in March after traveling 5,000 miles from Vermont on a 20-year-old BMW touring bike. The couple enjoy their time together in Mexico, making friends, relaxing, reading, and going for walks on Zicatela Beach. Carol is happy and content on her last day in Mexico. She and Timothy enjoy a late breakfast that morning and agree to take a walk together afterwards.
Even though Timothy wouldn't ordinarily break a date with Carol, in this case, he's just not in a mood for a walk anymore after breakfast. His legs are sore from a run the day before, and he just wants to relax and finish a novel he's reading, so he stays in the hotel room and relaxes while Carol sets off for the beach alone.
The couple part ways. It's a beautiful day, and Carol is looking forward to a walk in the sun.
As a result of recent incidents that have occurred on the beach at night, police are cautioning tourists and residents to avoid walking there when it's dark. They haven't made any such declarations about walking on the beach during the day. That's still quite safe.
In the last year, an American woman was stabbed to death in a town 35 miles south of Puerto Escondido. And the expatriate community here has recently been rocked by the machete slaying of a well-liked Irishman and the brutal killing of an American drifter.
Even though Carol is friendly, she's not a pushover. A colleague from Yale describes her as definitely not a shrinking violet. She is quiet but confident with a certain assurance.
Carol walks the beach, unaware that she is in grave danger. Carol feels safe on Zicatela Beach. There are always people around during the day. She's strong and knows she can take care of herself.
A terrible crime can happen anywhere, and unfortunately for Carol, she happens to be at the wrong place and in the wrong time.
Carol falls in love with Puerto Escondido, just as Timothy knew she would. The laid-back rustic charm of the Mexican village delights Carol. The people are friendly, and she feels at home. Zicatela Beach is well known as a surfer's paradise, but there's plenty of other things to do. It's the perfect place to enjoy a relaxing vacation and soak up some sun. But there's a darker side to this paradise, one Carol isn't aware of. A crime wave sweeping across Mexico has spread to the small village. Police caution tourists and residents to avoid Zicatela Beach at night, but no one imagines it could be dangerous during daylight hours. When her boyfriend Timothy feels sore and tired that afternoon, he doesn't think twice about backing out of their date to go on a walk after breakfast. He knows Carol can take care of herself. Besides, there are other people on the beach during the day. What could possibly go wrong? But a terrible crime can happen anywhere. Unfortunately for Carol, she's in the wrong place at the wrong time.
When Carol doesn't return from her walk by 3:30, Timothy knows something is wrong. He gets on his bike and starts to search for her.
Timothy goes everywhere he can think of in his search for Carol: the town hall, the municipal police office, the Red Cross, and even to the port captain. But he has no luck. No one has seen his girlfriend. Finally, a friend takes Timothy to the Attorney General's office, where he's given the terrible news. The officer tells him Carol is dead and that her body is at a morgue across town. The only thing he can do for her now is identify her.
I can't imagine how grief-stricken Tim must be at this point in time. He's blaming himself for what happened. However, there's nothing he can change in the moment to bring her back.
I think it's fairly typical for a member of a victim's family or their friends to blame themselves for not being able to assist when that person needed them the most. And Timothy is no different. He probably feels extremely guilty about the fact that he didn't go for a walk with her when she asked him to.
Anger is one of the first stages of mourning, so it's quite common for people to feel angry when a loved one dies. In this case, Timothy is told first thing that Carol drowned, so he thinks she behaved recklessly, and that just adds to his pain.
When someone drowns accidentally, we don't expect to see any major injuries on their body. Fortunately for forensic examiners, occasionally a victim is able to fight back to such a degree that they've scratched their assailant, and we can find DNA from that assailant under their fingernails if we get the body in a reasonable amount of time.
The police investigating Carol's death know more than they tell Timothy. They know Carol didn't drown. Once they arrive at Zicatella Beach, they suspect several people have witnessed what happens to Carol. But getting them to talk will not be easy.
When we consider a community such as Puerto Escondido, where perhaps many of the local people know each other very well, there may be some hesitance for people to come forward and provide information because they don't want the retribution that may come. So it's a difficult position for police to be in, because as witnesses have this information and police know there are witnesses, trying to get them to come forward is very difficult. They do their best to try to alleviate any fears they might have that they would be identified, for example, for providing information. Ultimately, the police have to decide whether the information they receive from a witness has to be revealed in the police file, or if it's something that can be received anonymously and acted on in that fashion.
After a 6-hour trip to transport Carol's body to the state capital of Waka City, Timothy is interrogated by a state police officer for 3 hours. The interview goes late into the night and is conducted in Spanish, a language Timothy barely understands. This is when he's told the terrible truth. Carol's death was not an accident. She was beaten and raped before she drowned in the ocean.
It's hard to imagine what's going through Timothy's mind. He's devastated by what happened to Carol, and at the same time, he's racked with guilt over not accompanying her on that walk on the beach. Plus, there's the terrifying experience of being interrogated by the Mexican police for hours in a language he barely understands. Timothy says in an interview that he wishes he could go back to a time before he realized Carol was murdered. He says that knowing she's dead was bad enough, but knowing how she suffered is even worse. He'll never get that image of her dead body out of his mind.
It's a well-known fact that the perpetrators of most violent crimes are known to their victims in some fashion. So when a person like Carol is murdered, it's not unusual for the police to wonder whether or not their significant other was involved in some fashion. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes of a relationship, and even though everything may seem fine on the outside, there may be issues that nobody is aware of. So for this reason, the police really need to clear Timothy to ensure he's not involved before they can move forward with any other potential suspects.
It's around this time that the police start looking for witnesses. A 12-year-old boy working in one of the nearby seafood restaurants tells police he refused service to an intoxicated man earlier that afternoon. The man is wearing dirty pants, a soiled green shirt, and cowboy boots with spurs. The boy says that after the man leaves the restaurant, he wanders off in the direction where Carol's body was found.
What's interesting is that children often tell it just like it is. They don't overthink it. They saw what they saw, and in a lot of cases, especially like this, they're willing to talk to the police about it, which is fantastic.
The state police check out Timothy's alibi. Timothy claims he's at the hotel at the time of Carol's murder. Witnesses say they see him working on his motorcycle at the hotel during the time investigators estimate Carol is attacked. Timothy is clearly not their man, and he's finally allowed to leave. Another valuable witness is Mario Grossi, the owner of a local pizza restaurant. Grossi says he's running on the beach when he's stopped by a surfer who tells him a horrifying tale.
Grossi says a surfer told him that he saw a man putting a woman in the ocean. Grossi wanted to check it out, but the surfer refused to show him where it was, saying that he was afraid of the killer. He thought the killer might still be hiding somewhere on the beach.
Why is everyone so afraid to identify Carol's killer? Police wonder if the murderer is someone known to them. Someone who was killed before. Someone who will kill again. Before the day ends, another witness will answer some of these questions.
The witness tells police about speaking to two young people described as foreigners. The two foreigners walk off Cicatella Beach soon after the intoxicated man is kicked out of the restaurant. This witness claims the foreigner said they're beating up a woman out there.
There? It's a startling clue. Could two people have killed Carol? Carol Schlloberg, a talented artist from Vermont, is enjoying her first vacation with her new boyfriend Timothy in Puerto Escondido, Mexico. The couple are enjoying themselves in the surfer's paradise. Residents seem to welcome them, and before long, they make some new friends. Carol feels so at home in the village that when Timothy is too tired and sore for their daily walk, she thinks nothing of going alone. But Carol's about to meet someone on the beach who is the furthest thing from a friend. Someone who will think nothing of killing her in order to get what he wants. Though Carol's death was originally believed to be accidental drowning, her bruised and battered body says otherwise. The autopsy results are back, proving that Carol was still alive when someone put her in the ocean.
Some of the wounds on Carol's body turn out to be bite marks, and the autopsy also reveals that she was likely sexually assaulted. They are able to take DNA from Carol's remains for analysis.
Depending on how long a body's been left submerged, it can make it more difficult for forensics to get information from the victim. DNA, hairs, bits of clothing, things like that can be washed away. The skin becomes macerated and soft, and it's harder to see bruising, lacerations. And after a certain point, we don't know if some of those injuries came from being tossed around in the swell of the ocean or dragged along the sandy shores. It just becomes a lot harder to tell which injuries occurred when.
Police investigate suspects in the area who have a history of violent sex crimes against women. Back in the United States, the story of Carol's murder hits the news. There's an outcry over her violent death. Carol's family criticizes the police and the U.S. consulates in Mexico and Washington for their lack of action and support. The pressure on the police builds. They're in a race to find Carol's killer before he or they hurt someone else.
The negative American press about Carol's death is really hurting a country that's already struggling with a recession. It's just adding more fuel to the fire. There's also a recent crime wave, and this, combined with the publication of Carol's death, is hurting the livelihoods of many.
As the pressure from the media intensifies, U.S. government officials get involved. A government representative says the consulate failed to provide basic info to the family and did not appear interested in making waves unless they had to.
It's understandable that Carol's family would be angry and frustrated and feel like the U.S. Embassy isn't doing enough. The embassy took 4 days to send 2 officials to Puerto Escondido to investigate. Once they get there, their presence puts even more pressure on the Mexican police.
Carol is the 5th American murdered in Mexico in the past 3 months. An American real estate executive is shot while hailing a taxi in his Mexico City neighborhood. 2 Nevada fishermen are sleeping on a beach in Baja when they are beaten to death. The men each carried nearly $1,000 in cash, but only their truck is recovered. The men own rental property in both Nevada and California. William Markley Nixon, a U.S. architect and socialite, is fatally stabbed in the hacienda he turned into a multi-million-dollar hotel in Cuernavaca, just outside of Mexico City. Since he recently had sex before his death, police believe Nixon's murder was either a hate crime or a crime of passion. It's a troubling trend that begins in 1989, when University of Texas student Mark Kilroy is kidnapped in Matamoros, Mexico, during spring break. The 21-year-old is taken to a ranch where he is tortured for hours before being murdered in a human sacrifice ritual. Is the series of murders just a coincidence? Or are American citizens being targeted?
The media can be a double-edged sword for the police in particular. On one hand, they're a great avenue to disseminate information to the public in a timely manner, especially when they're looking for someone or looking for witnesses in a particular case. However, sometimes what happens is they can scare a community with information that comes forward. And that can sometimes be detrimental to, for instance, the tourist industry.
Most of Mexico's tourists come from the US, so the widespread publicity about Carol's death has the potential to be cataclysmic to a country that depends on tourist dollars.
Carol's family is grief-stricken and enraged when they learn a Puerto Escondido port official ignored a phone call that could have saved her life. The caller reported they're killing an American woman at Zicatela Point. Why did the official ignore the call? Why was nothing done to save Carol? When this news hits the press, it adds even more fuel to the fire.
The police are keenly aware that the family is searching for justice, and they want answers as to what happened to their loved one. They want to know why they were killed, how they were killed, and what plans there are to bring the person responsible to justice. And this can be agonizingly slow for the family who is waiting for information because they're not aware of the background work being done by the investigators as the investigation proceeds forward. Finding justice for a family is a difficult thing because what the court system may see as justice may be very different from what the family expects as justice.
If I put myself in the shoes of a grief-stricken family member, it's got to seem like an absolute eternity. But that's the way the system works, and you have to grow accustomed to working within that. So I guess you could say it is as it is.
The fact that port officials ignored such an urgent call is distressing, but police are struck by one word: there. This is the second time it's been implied that two men were responsible for the attack on Carol, not just one.
With the increased attention from the American media and officials from the US consulate now on the scene, the pressure is on for the investigators. Luckily for police, a new witness soon comes forward with startling news. News of Carol's brutal murder has hit the American press, and the country is outraged. Due to pressure from the family and the US government, and the outcry from the public, officials from the US consulate in Mexico are now in Puerto Escondido. The American public and Carol's family are demanding justice. Thankfully, Carol's loved ones won't have to wait much longer to find out the identity of the killer.
As the information comes into police, they're no longer sure that they're only looking for one suspect. They've now received information that there were two people seen attacking and killing the American artist.
Police receive another promising tip from a clerk who works in a store on Zicatela Beach. The clerk tells them a man who appeared to be drunk came into the store a short time after the murder took place, asked for a soft drink, and then ran away.
The investigators are finally breaking through the wall of silence that has been a challenge from the beginning. They're narrowing in on a suspect.
Thanks to witness accounts, they now have a sketch of the suspect. Even as they circulate it in the hopes of obtaining more information, they recognize the man. They already have a good idea who he is. Witness descriptions match a dangerous man, a local with a criminal record who has hurt other women.
A police sketch artist that's well trained can actually come up with sketches that are very representative of a possible perpetrator. And I've seen it multiple times where it leads to the arrest of someone and they look remarkably like the police sketch. So a police sketch is only ever as reliable as the witness relaying the information, because you've got dozens of different eyebrows and nose shapes and mouth shapes and facial hair and hairstyles to choose from for that sketch artist to put together. So if the witness is wishy-washy on the details, you can end up with a sketch that doesn't look like the perpetrator.
While police often have to weigh the value of information provided by an eyewitness, at least now they've confirmed that 2 of the statements provided are accurate. So though Carol's death was tragic, they're lucky that they have so many eyewitness accounts of the occurrence.
But if 2 people attacked Carol, who else was involved? Someone must have seen the second suspect. Investigators continue to press potential witnesses for more information. Did anyone see a second man with the inebriated suspect?
The pain a family feels when a loved one is murdered is excruciating, but it's even worse when the crime has been committed in a different country. When you factor in language and distance barriers, it's even more difficult for the family to get answers. Timothy's going through a particularly hard time. Not only was he expecting to spend this beautiful life with Carol that they just started out on, but he also feels the responsibility of not going on that last walk with her.
If he only had, he asks himself, would she still be alive?
The what-ifs are agonizing, and there will always be some who think that he shouldn't have left her alone. He knew that she was a strong woman walking on a public beach in broad daylight in a place they both thought was safe and welcoming. Carol should have been safe. There was no way to predict what happened to her. People like to think that they could prevent crimes like this, but the truth is they could happen to anyone at any time.
4 days after Carol's murder, investigators get the break they've been working so hard for. Praxedis Ramirez, a witness to the brutal assault on Carol, identifies both of the men involved. 2 men, not 1. Police arrest suspect Cirilo Artemio Oliveira at his work site. He is the same man that investigators recognize from the composite sketch. He has a lot of explaining to do.
Oliveira says he's innocent, but right away the investigators know he's lying. One of the first things they notice when they arrest him is the scratches on his body.
When questioned about the scratches, Oliveira claims they were caused by a bucket of cement that fell on him at work.
Now that police have a suspect in custody, one of the elements they'll consider is whether or not he has any marks that would indicate he was involved in a struggle of any kind. Scratches, bruises, cuts, they all may tell a story and may all be related back to Carol somehow. There is a slim chance that the story Oliveira is telling police about being injured is true, but it's more likely that the injuries are the result of something else.
From the beginning, Oliveira's story is very difficult to believe. He claims that his injuries resulted from a falling bucket of cement. We would expect a falling bucket of cement to leave bruises, maybe the mark of the pail itself, and maybe minor abrasions. You're being hit with a heavy, blunt object. Fingernail scratches, on the other hand, from a victim, leave long striations, claw marks, basically. 2 very different scenarios.
With the net closing around him and the obvious wounds on his arms, Oliveira must know his chances don't look good. But why did he attack Carol? Was she just in the wrong place at the wrong time? The question now is, will Oliveira reveal the identity of his accomplice? Will he tell police the name of the second man who attacked Carol? Police arrest 35-year-old construction worker Cirilo Artemio Oliveira for the assault, rape, and murder of American artist Carol Schlloberg. Though Oliveira initially denies any involvement in the attack, under questioning, he eventually names his accomplice, 31-year-old Rosendo Marquez Gutierrez. Oliveira and Gutierrez met in prison in nearby Pocachula, where Oliveira was serving time for raping and robbing another female tourist in Puerto Escondido. Gutierrez is serving time for the assault.
There's often a debate about whether or not a person who commits a crime like this can be rehabilitated. And while that debate rages on, every justice system is different in terms of the maximum sentences that can be handed out if convicted for murder and sexual assault or rape. Where life sentences don't exist, the only thing left to the justice system is to keep them in custody as long as permissible by law, and after that monitor them in the community.
Two hardened criminals and copious amounts of alcohol are a dangerous combination. When Carol crosses their path, the men see her as an opportunity to have a little fun.
Oliveira says that by the time the two men left the bar, they'd already decided to rape her. Since she was a woman traveling alone, they figured she'd be easy prey. But we know from the accounts of Carol's friends and family, who said how adventurous and feisty she is, that they were wrong. We also can see that from the scratches she left on her killer's body. Carol was a fighter.
Carol surprises them. She fights back with a strength they aren't expecting. She bites the men. They bite her back. The struggle grows uglier, more vicious. After raping Carol, Oliveira claims they threw her, still alive, into the Pacific, where she drowns.
If true, his account is heartbreaking. Could Carol have been saved by one of the many witnesses? We'll never know.
The trial for Carol Schlloberg's murder begins in September 1999 in Oaxaca, over a year after the attack on the vibrant artist. For Carol's family, it's been a long wait. A land dispute between two municipalities, both of which claim Puerto Escondido falls within their boundaries, delays the trial. The case bounces between one court in Pochutla and another in Oaxaca for nearly a year. The evidence against the two men is beyond question. In addition to the witness reports and the scratches on Oliveira at the time of his arrest, the bite marks on Carol's body match Oliveira's and Gutierrez's teeth.
Bite mark analysis used to be kind of a gold standard for prosecuting perpetrators. However, there are so many variables and the technology behind it is very difficult to explain to a jury. There have been lots of mistakes made using this theory. Currently, bite marks are more of an effective tool for an investigator than they are for a prosecutor.
Bite marks can be as unique as fingerprints, so this kind of evidence is very difficult to dispute. The challenge is making it understandable for a judge and jury, as detailed comparisons of teeth and wounds are quite complex. Oliveira and Gutierrez are found guilty of the assault and murder of Carol Schlloberg.
Though gone too soon, Carol's legacy lives on. Her younger sister Linda makes sure that Carol's artwork is never forgotten and organizes 2 exhibits of it in the year following Carol's death.
Yale displays Carol's abstract paintings in its Art and Architecture Gallery in June 1998. Her other alma mater, the Montserrat College of Art in Beverly, Massachusetts, also holds a retrospective of her art. Montserrat College names a new scholarship and a gallery after her. Jane Schlossberg, Carol's mother, says she was a beautiful person and there's no reason why anyone should have done this to her. She wouldn't hurt anyone. She was a beautiful soul.
Though Carol will always be missed by those who know and love her, at least there is some measure of justice for the family. The 2 men who killed her are behind bars for the rest of their lives, and they'll never hurt another woman again.
The Pacific Coast Highway in Northern California is known for its scenic vistas along 600 miles of rugged coastline.
The Pacific Coast Highway is a beautiful drive. Any kind of terrain you can imagine and love is a part of this highway. You have mountains, you've got beaches, you've got forests, national parks. It's a beautiful scenic drive.
Lindsay Cutsall and Jason Allen are engaged to be married in a month. And a weekend in paradise continues with a night camping on a beach overlooking the Pacific.
These are 2 Christian camp counselors with no known enemies and their whole lives ahead of them.
But this night will be the end of the highway for a young couple in love.
All they know is that Lindsay and Jason left by car for the weekend, and they're nowhere to be found.
Spanning more than 600 miles, the Pacific Coast Highway offers spectacular vistas and endless roadside attractions in the California sun. Just north of San Francisco, Sonoma County boasts over 400 wineries and the towery redwood forest, fed by the Russian River.
The Russian River Valley has plenty of small towns and quaint little shops to visit. It's a great detour off the Pacific Coast Highway.
Lindsay Cutsall and her fiancé, Jason Allen, hang out at one of the many beaches in Sonoma County. Lindsay and Jason spend the summer together as counselors at a Christian whitewater camp. They tell their boss, Craig Lomax, that they're going to do some sightseeing before camp ends, and they go home to Ohio.
The camp is about 40 miles east of Sacramento in the Sierra Nevada foothills. Jason and Lindsay thought it would be great to explore some of the Pacific Coast while they have the opportunity. They don't have any firm plan, they just want to go where the trail takes them.
Friday, August 13th, they leave camp in Lindsay's late model red hatchback. Saturday, August 14th. Lindsay and Jason end up at Fishhead Beach, close to where the Russian River spills out into the Pacific.
It's almost like this couple had their honeymoon before the marriage. They got to travel for a whole month together before returning to Ohio and getting married.
22-year-old Lindsay Kutzel enjoys adventure sports and outdoor activities, but also enjoys her quiet time.
Lindsay loves working with young people. She's known to counsel teenage girls and talk to them as long as they need to talk.
Lindsay is the daughter of a pastor. She's wanted to be a missionary her whole life and graduates with a degree from Bible College in West Virginia, where she meets Jason Allen.
Jason also has a degree in Bible studies. He wants to be a missionary.
Jason, who is 4 years older than Lindsay, has a thirst for adrenaline and a playful quality. Whether it's kayaking, skiing, hunting, or bungee jumping.
They dream to set up an adventure ministry. 2 of the locations that they've tossed around are Wyoming or Costa Rica. They clearly have big plans for an exciting future together.
Jason is known as a practical joker. Shortly after Lindsay graduates from Bible College, the two are engaged to be married as soon as the summer's over. As the Saturday of their weekend trip comes to an end at Fishhead Beach, they each write journal entries in a notebook someone has left for visitors.
Jason's journal entry sort of playfully references making dinner by the stirring mac and cheese quote. But he soon starts to write about being thankful for his fiancée and being able to spend 2 wonderful days with her. He thanks God for the opportunity to live a life with this woman.
Lindsay writes, "The sun is going down on the horizon. All I see is the beam shining on the cliff face, and I know God is awesome." Clearly, these two are having the time of their lives, and this is really going to be a trip for them to remember.
The young couple enjoy the beach all evening, have some dinner, and bed down in their sleeping bags.
There are signs posted at most beaches in California indicating that no overnight camping is permitted, but they're not always, perfectly visible or well known.
At this point in the investigation, it's not even clear whether Lindsay and Jason knew that camping was prohibited on this particular beach. There are signs posted in the area, but they're not necessarily that visible.
The couple has no choice but to sleep on the beach. The local motel is fully booked.
Sunday night, back at the Christian whitewater rafting camp, Craig Lomax grows concerned when Lindsay and Jason don't show up to their 5 p.m. meeting.
Immediately, Craig feels that something went wrong. It's not like this couple to even be a few minutes late, let alone not show up at all.
Lomax calls Lindsay and Jason's parents.
It's unclear what their parents would know at this point. They knew that they were going to be away for the weekend. They knew that they were going to the San Francisco area, and they knew what type of vehicle they were driving. But as far as the minutia, they really had no idea.
All they know is that Lindsay and Jason left by car for the weekend. They left Friday, and now it's Sunday, and they're nowhere to be found. Their plan was basically just to drive to the San Francisco area, but other than that, there was nothing firm.
The parents are just as concerned as the camp director. They're on a plane halfway across the country by the next day.
Lindsay's mother, Kathy, makes a desperate attempt to track down her daughter.
Kathy has a friend who's a banker, and she thinks maybe he can help by figuring out Lindsay's credit card transactions, where she might have been, what her movements were, and when she last used her card.
Credit cards and ATMs are a great tool for police departments to use in cases of disappearances, kidnappings, or even murders. As soon as a financial transaction occurs on one of these cards, it gives authorities a definitive time and location stamp, either leading up to the crime, during the crime, or after the crime has been committed. The proof they provide is as good as it gets.
When the parents retrieve the credit card information and turn it over to the police, this information gives the police a definitive timeline of at least some of their actions and where they were at specific times. And it gives them places to visit and potentially people to talk to, and you never know what those witnesses are going to say.
Police receive a missing persons report, but have very little to go on.
They've been gone for at least 48 hours and they have a car. They could potentially be anywhere.
Lindsay and Jason purchased food and beverages at a grocery store in Auburn, California, Friday night. The next day, at around 1 p.m., there's a transaction for hot sauce at a market in San Francisco's Fisherman's Wharf.
Lindsay's parents passed this credit card transaction information on to the police, who use it as part of their missing persons investigation.
So they know to look in and around Sonoma County, but that's a massive area. This must have just induced such panic in the families, not knowing whether their loved ones had gotten in an accident or worse.
Local police get Sonoma County Sheriff's Office involved.
Typically what happens when a couple like this is reported missing, the police will gather as much information as they can about the individuals from friends, neighbors, relatives, and they will fan this information out to other agencies through what's typically called a BOLO, which is a be on the lookout. All of the police agencies, within a certain radius of the BOLO will be on the lookout for these individuals.
Area law enforcement receives a missing persons report.
The local police would receive a picture and the names of the missing persons, along with a description of the 1992 hatchback with Ohio plates.
It will take an airborne rescue with the California Highway Patrol for police to get the next clue in the couple's disappearance. No one could imagine what they'd discover. As it turns out, Lindsay and Jason were not the only two people on the beach that night. August 16th, 2004, Sonoma County, California. The area to the north of San Francisco includes hundreds of wineries, miles of beaches, and infinite number of things to do in the great outdoors.
With so many different attractions, it's only natural that they want to explore the area.
When Lindsay Cutzall and Jason Allen don't come back to their Christian whitewater rafting camp, it leaves friends and family scrambling to track them down.
The next couple of days are torture for the parents. They stay with the camp director, Craig Lomax, and try to help the police any way they can.
An all-points bulletin, or an APB, is a method used by law enforcement agencies to disseminate information to other agencies who may not be connected to them on the same networks. It's a way to get that information out so everybody is aware that police are looking for a particular person for a particular reason.
Two days after Lindsay and Jason are reported missing, a California Highway Patrol officer discovers a car matching the description of Lindsay and Jason's, parked at a roadside turnout about 2 miles north of Jenner.
The car appears to just be parked. There's no sign of any vehicle trouble or forced entry.
When they run the Ohio license plates, they discover that the car is registered to Lindsay Kutzel.
While he's investigating the car, a citizen asks him for help. Someone is stranded on the side of a nearby cliff.
The officer calls in a chopper from the nearby county sheriff's office to rescue the man stranded on the cliff. As the helicopter completes its cliffside rescue, it flies over Fishhead Beach.
The helicopter pilot spots 2 sleeping bags on the beach. He radios to Highway Patrol to investigate.
Police inspect the beach and discover the bodies of Lindsay Kutzel and Jason Allen.
While police are notifying the family of this tragic news, an investigative team is combing the scene for clues.
Both Lindsay and Jason are still in their sleeping bags. They each suffer gunshot wounds to the head.
When you first walk on the scene and begin your investigation, the positions of the deceased tell a bit of a story about what may have happened in the moments leading up to their death. If they're lying there and nothing seems to be disturbed, it makes you wonder how they came to be that way, or if there was a struggle, things would be scattered about. One of the first things they notice is that they're still in their sleeping bags. They haven't moved. And she's still wearing a relatively valuable piece of jewelry or a pendant around her neck. It doesn't seem to be a robbery at this point.
It appears that they were simply attacked in their sleep. There's no evidence of any other type of assault or anything else occurring. In fact, their valuables are still present.
The motive for these murders is not immediately evident.
Police discover Lindsay's Bible, driftwood the two had collected, and the journal that Lindsay and Jason wrote in the night before.
So what the police managed to uncover at the scene is their camera. And a camera can be a valuable source of information because if they've taken photographs along their journey, it's now going to give the police a roadmap, essentially, of where they've been and potentially who they've been in contact with. And it gives them a place to start.
The camera the couple owns is sitting there in the sand.
The location of the victim's camera would be an important discovery for investigators at this point who really have no idea what's occurred. They don't have any witnesses at this point. So using the footage on the camera, they might be able to retrace their steps, find out where they'd been prior to this, and see if anybody turns up as a potential suspect.
The camera shows they've come from San Francisco.
With this new information, police can now retrace their steps and maybe even interview people who saw the couple before their death.
This is a difficult crime scene for investigators to process. It's a well-traveled area to begin with, so it's difficult to know who's come and gone from there over time. 4 days have passed now, and this crime scene has been out in the weather. We don't know if anybody else has walked past, but it's likely that the crime scene has been severely degraded.
There's a driftwood hut on the beach covered with graffiti, and inside, police find a lot of Lindsay and Jason's belongings. Sadly, though, there's no indication of who committed this crime or any clues that bring them further to a solution.
In this particular case, there are no footprints or tracks, but it's difficult to tell if that's as a result of the weather or if just nobody has been by.
Police wonder if a beer bottle found at the scene could be a clue. It's a beer bottle from an obscure Wisconsin brewery for a brand of beer that isn't offered in the area.
This is a very busy beach, and finding beer bottles there isn't uncommon. But the weird thing about this one is how far it's traveled. Why would a beer bottle from Wisconsin be here in California? Since the police have nothing else to go on, maybe this is some sort of a clue.
At this stage, any evidence the investigators think they have is likely not going to point to a particular suspect. There's no way to know whether anything they found is related to the crime scene or if it's something that was there prior to or left subsequent to the fact. They really have nothing at this point.
Word of the crime scene investigation reaches the media. It makes headlines across California and beyond. The tips start pouring in to Sonoma County Police.
It's sort of a double-edged sword to have a vast amount of information suddenly start pouring in as a result of the media exposure. Investigators don't know whether the information they're being provided is accurate or not, but they have an obligation to sort of track it all down. But they also need to prioritize it in terms of what is likely to produce the most benefit to the investigation.
One tipster suggests they had seen a drifter in the area.
With so many people with no fixed address passing through the area, how are police supposed to figure out who their suspect is?
Could it be a drifter from Wisconsin who attacks Lindsay and Jason in the middle of the night? Jenner, California, north of San Francisco in Sonoma County, this sunshine destination features the breathtaking beaches and vistas millions have discovered on the Pacific Coast Highway. The Russian River Valley, home to wineries and beaches, goes west to the Pacific. Two Christian youth adventure camp counselors, Lindsay Cutsall and Jason Allen, take a weekend getaway a month before they're to marry.
They're innocently sleeping on the beach, probably feeling blessed about their lives and this wonderful trip, when their lives are suddenly cut short. Now the pressure is on police to figure out who did this and why.
Ballistics experts discover that a relatively uncommon type of ammunition was used. A .45-70 caliber round was found in the victims.
A ballistics examination of the slugs removed from the victims indicate a fairly large caliber firearm was used.
2 shots, but no shell casings. So we have 2 different scenarios. Either the perpetrator planned this crime enough to remember to pick up the shell casings after the murders, or they used a gun that didn't eject shell casings.
The .45/70 caliber is a long-range type of ammunition with a unique weight. The 70 represents the 70 grains of black powder in each shell.
A lot of people have heard of a .45 caliber gun, but a .45-70 caliber is a lot more rare. Most people would have never heard of that. The .45-70 is made for very large game and is an old round.
The closer a weapon is fired to a person's body, the more likelihood there is that residue will be found around the injury. At very close range, it'll be even more so. So if, for example, a rifle barrel had been sawed off, there'd be even more residue.
Unlike a shotgun blast, a rifle shot is a small entry wound and a big exit wound. The The amount of damage that a 45-70 could do is unimaginable.
You can be hit by all the little projectiles that are in the shell casing, but at close range, you may also have an injury from the wadding or even the tip of the shell casing itself. There can be burn marks. Flame shoots up for about 6 inches when it's fired, and the residue can travel a foot or more.
Police search the area for ranchers or farmers who might own a weapon that can fire 45-70 rounds. Meanwhile, evidence from the credit card statement and camera enable police to interview shop owners who helped trace the steps of the young couple. After a trip to San Francisco's Fisherman's Wharf, the couple head north to Sebastopol, where a surfboard shop owner tells police he remembered a couple looking for a place to overnight.
He tells Lindsay and Jason to head west to Jenner, where there's a romantic restaurant and places to camp on the beach.
All along the Pacific Coast Highway are small towns with local shops. These towns live and survive because of people like Lindsay and Jason, everyday tourists. The shop owners are always willing to help and give advice. It is all part of the culture in North California.
Operating from a timeline is an important part of the investigation because it helps police investigators go backwards to see if any of the places that the victims were known to be in resulted in some sort of conflict with another person or a group of people. Was there anybody that they had contact with that may have wanted to harm them later on?
Meanwhile, police work through all the tips that have been coming in. A call comes in about a Wisconsin man who was in the area at the time.
The Wisconsin suspect passes his polygraph test, and so does another man from Arizona. In fact, everyone that the police test seems to check out.
A week after the murders, a local man, Sean Gallen, is arrested on a beach along the Russian River, 15 miles from Jenner.
Since this man is carrying a stolen gun, police are going to see if there's any connection between him and the two murders.
At this stage, based on the information they have, the evidence they have, there's simply not enough to be able to arrest and charge this person.
While Gallen is in custody for possession of an illegal firearm in 2004, police search his apartment.
What police find inside Gallen's apartment is disturbing. Pieces of shark in his refrigerator and a dead wild turkey in his trash can.
Police discover a 5-gallon tub containing a strange soup of matchsticks, bullets, copious amounts of blood, lengths of pipe, and explosive materials.
The objects they found at Gallen's apartment, in and of themselves, are not illegal. However, the combination of those things lead us to believe there may be something odd in his character.
What they don't find is a murder weapon or any other evidence linking Gallen to the murders.
In 2004, Gallen offers to take a polygraph test to prove that he was nowhere near Fishhead Beach on the night of the murders. But later, Gallen changes his mind and avoids the lie detector.
Just because someone refuses to take a polygraph doesn't mean they're guilty. It just means they don't want to take a polygraph, and that's their right.
There is nothing obliging a person to take a polygraph test. A person's refusal to take a test may trigger some questions in an investigator's mind. The kind of question like, if you're not hiding anything, why wouldn't you just take this test? That's the tactic that's commonly used.
Police have a hunch that there's something off about this guy.
While in most justifications, Polygraph tests are not admissible in court, but it can still be used as a tool by investigators to gain traction towards the facts in an investigation. And refusal to take one may actually speak volumes. Did Sean Gallen's behavior include the murder of a young Christian couple on an oceanside beach? One month before they're about to be married, young Christian couple Lindsay Cutzhall and Jason Allen are murdered on a California beach in 2004. As they camp under the heavens, they're shot at close range by a sawed-off rifle. A local man, Sean Gallen, is arrested for possession of an illegal gun a few miles away. But there's no evidence he had anything to do with the murders.
It's not against the law to behave a bit oddly, but Sean Gallen does have a stolen weapon on him, so he is a person of interest.
The case grows cold. Looking for any connection to the case, police investigate a similar crime 3 decades earlier and 1,000 miles away. Police look to a 1972 murder on the west coast of Canada and discover eerie similarities.
The circumstances are so similar that police consider a drifter named Joseph Burgess as a potential suspect in this case, even though no one really knows where he is.
At Radar Beach near Tofino, British Columbia, Canada, a draft dodger and drifter named Joseph Henry Burgess is accused of shooting a young, unwed couple as they slept, 20-year-old Anne Durant and 19-year-old Leif Carlsbad.
Each victim has been shot at close range 4 times in the head with a .22 caliber weapon. Anne Durant also has a bullet wound to her hip and hand.
What strikes investigators in California is the Christian connection between the 2 cases. Burgess also owns a .22 caliber rifle that could be broken down into a duffel bag.
Joseph, who lives outdoors, calls himself Job, and after being kicked out of a Christian commune, he started wandering around reciting scripture and harassing tourists.
Burgess tells a nude sunbather that he doesn't approve of a young Christian couple camping together overnight when they're not married. A few days later, that couple are found murdered, and Burgess has disappeared.
When police go to find Burgess, he's nowhere to be found.
An international manhunt would turn up nothing on Joseph Burgess.
Is Joseph Burgess still in this area? If so, he could be the prime suspect in these murders.
But 5 years after Fishhead Beach murders, Burgess would be found in New Mexico.
He's known as the Cookie Bandit in New Mexico, where he steals food from homes on the countryside. Instead of going quietly, he engages in a firefight with police and ends up dead.
There's no evidence to suggest Burgess had anything to do with the killings. Once again, investigators come up empty. Years pass with no new information coming to light.
Since months have passed with no firm suspects in this case, some of the theories that are floating around town are a bit strange. Also, a $50,000 reward has been offered for any information leading to an arrest.
Then, another bizarre incident in the area draws attention to one of the first suspects, local resident Sean Gallen. In 2009, Gurneville, California. A man sits in his parked convertible. From his apartment balcony, Sean Gallen shoots at the car with a bow and arrow. The arrow comes through McNeil's roof, nearly grazing his head.
It appears that Sean Gallen had very little reason to fire an arrow at James McNeil's car. He had simply crafted some arrows and wanted a reason to use them.
After a 2-day-long standoff with the SWAT team, police safely arrest Sean Gallen in his apartment. He serves 3 years in prison for assault with a deadly weapon.
In spite of the crimes, the guns being concealed, his violent, erratic behavior, there's no conclusive evidence that ties Sean Gallen to the murders of Lindsay and Jason.
A family friend tells police Sean calls his father from jail on the weapons charge and has him destroy guns that Sean has stored at home. Police talk to Sean Gallen's father. He confirms that he destroyed weapons belonging to his son.
Sean asks his father to destroy all of the guns and weapons that he has back home. It's odd, to say the least, but would his father have known that he's destroying evidence? Possibly not. One would think that it would be an odd request.
He says he did it because Sean suffers from mental health issues and is unstable due to a bad LSD trip that happened when he was a young man.
It's hard to prove that somebody is consciously destroying evidence. What it does tell us is that the father was uncomfortable with Sean having weapons and felt the need to destroy them.
David Gallen says he threw weapons into a nearby pond, but they are never found.
They know Sean liked to hunt unusual animals and were looking for a gun typically used for big game hunting. But because Sean's dad destroyed and concealed these weapons, the murder weapon appears to be gone and there's no chance now of recovering it.
There's still nothing to link Sean Gallen to Lindsay and Jason's murder. Family and friends of Lindsay and Jason pray for answers. 13 years after their murder, their prayers would be answered. Lindsay Kutzall and Jason Allen take a final weekend getaway on a beach 200 feet below the Pacific Coast Highway. But as they sleep, someone finds them in the night and murders them. For years, investigators can't connect the evidence to a killer, leaving families and friends praying for answers.
Over the years, one suspect persists, Sean Gallen. Sean's own father says his son is unstable, and that's why he concealed weapons and destroyed them for his son.
If the hunting rifle used in the murders is one of the guns, police will never know. The guns are never found. With the advent of social media, Sean Gallen offers the world an insight into his madness.
He's got lots of posts about conspiracy theories and secret wars that weren't reported.
March 24th, 2017. After a series of bizarre social media posts, Sean Gallen shoots and kills his own brother, Seamus. When police take him into custody, Gallen admits to Lindsay and Jason's murder.
Sean had been arrested for shooting his own brother. And in the course of the police investigation, Sean admits to killing Lindsay and Jason many years before.
Police already know that Sean has a loose connection to reality. Is it really possible that he's responsible for these murders?
It's now a very tricky time for investigators. If they push too hard, they may loosen Sean's grip on reality even more. And any information he may give up about Lindsay and Jason may prove to be useless. But they do need him to keep talking. With every word, they move one step closer to locking the entire case down with solid evidence.
When they're conducting an interview of a suspect, they would be looking for information that the suspect provides that really only the suspect or potentially a witness would be aware of. That information was never released to the public, so a random person wouldn't just know that information.
Gallen tells police he's drunk when he drives to Fishhead Beach the night of August 14th, 2004.
It's unclear why Sean decides to stop here, but he appears to enjoy wandering the beaches in the area. It's during one of these walks that he notices Lindsay and Jason asleep on the beach.
According to Sean, the series of events happened this way.
Well, Gallen says he saw Lindsay and Jason sleeping on the beach, which is illegal. And he essentially blames the two of them for their own demise.
After he sees the two sleeping peacefully on the beach, Sean Gallen turns around to go back to his truck. He gets his rifle, a vintage .45-70 hunting rifle, and returns to the campsite.
The likely reason that Jason is shot first is that Gallen would want to prevent any potential resistance, which Jason would have presented.
Lindsay awoke with the first gunshot and saw him before he shot her in the head.
Sean Gallen went into great detail with the police as to what he did at the scene that night, picking up the shell casings and putting them in a pop can, and then hiding the pop can up by the highway.
13 years after the murder of Lindsay and Jason, investigators recover the soda can containing shell casings in a bush beside the road, exactly where Sean Gallen said he had left it.
When the police went to that location, there was the pop can, exactly how Sean had explained it. And inside were the shell casings from the bullets used to kill the couple on the beach.
Police recover the .45-70 shell casings exactly where Sean told them they would be. He's essentially given them the critical piece of evidence that confirms that he is responsible for the murder of Jason and Lindsay.
It is a massive break in this decades-long investigation. In order to avoid the death penalty, Sean Gallen pleads guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder and receives 3 consecutive life sentences with no chance of parole.
Lindsay's mother and other loved ones are comforted by the fact that even though Jason and Lindsay's lives were short, at least they left a legacy.